Should Keir Starmer resign over the Peter Mandelson saga? Did he know that Peter Mandelson had failed vetting on 2 points? Or did he mislead Parliament by saying he didn't know? If he didn't know, as Prime Minister, why on earth did he not know? Before we get into details of all that though, I really would appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel, you could like this video, leave your comments below. I really do appreciate all your support. I'm grateful for you being here, and thank you very much. Now let's get into the story for today. As we all know, Keir Starmer is due to appear in Parliament in a couple of hours time-ish now to answer these very questions. But before he does that, I want to get in there and put my slant on it. Now here is what Keir Starmer said a couple of days ago.
That I wasn't told that Peter Mandelson had failed security vetting when he's appointed is staggering. That I wasn't told that he'd failed security vetting when I was telling Parliament that due process had been followed is unforgivable. Not only was I not told, no minister was told. And I'm absolutely furious about that. What I intend to do is to go to Parliament on Monday to set out all the relevant facts in true transparency so Parliament has the full picture. That I wasn't told.
Are we really to believe that no minister was told, that the Prime Minister himself didn't know that Peter Mandelson had failed vetting? Is Keir Starmer so incompetent that he didn't know of Peter Mandelson's background, of his relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, of his being sacked from the government 2 times before? Is Starmer really that naive to know that? And as Prime Minister, he really should have known. Now, back in September of 2025, this very issue arose in Parliament at PMQs, and here is what Kevin Badenoch and Keir Starmer had to say on the issue.
Now, more than ever, we need our ambassador to Washington fully focused on this issue and liaising closely with America. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in Peter Mandelson?
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying the victims of Epstein are the forefront of our minds. He was a despicable criminal who committed the most heinous crimes and destroyed the lives of so many women and girls. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship. This is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom having full confidence that he didn't know that Peter Mandelson was connected to Jeffrey Epstein and to the former Prince Andrew. Is that really the case? Full confidence? As we all know, the very next day, Peter Mandelson was sacked. He's since been stripped of his lordship, I believe, and his companies have all started crashing and burning around him. Nevertheless, earlier on today, there's another clip I want to share that says that maybe Starmer did know that he had failed vetting. Let's just watch this little video as well and let me know your thoughts.
We've got some breaking news on a big day for the Prime Minister when it comes to what went on with Peter Mandelson and his vetting. The row, as you know, is whether or not Keir Starmer should have been told that Peter Mandelson failed his vetting. That vetting that was done after the announcement of his appointment, but before he took up the job. Keir Starmer insists that he should have been told. In fact, the top civil servant cleared him for the job. Here is the development in the last half an hour. We've discovered that buried in official papers that were released a few weeks ago, the head of the civil service, Simon Case, in November 2024, told Keir Starmer that he ought to get all of the security vetting done before he announced the appointment. Right now, Keir Starmer's case is...
So just to clarify, Keir Starmer was told he ought to get all the vetting done before the appointment was made. Now, if you and I go for a job interview anywhere, all the background checks are done before we get appointed, aren't they? There are lots of legal requirements, lots of checks and balances they do, and due diligence to make sure that we're fit for the job. We have these DBS checks if you want to work with children. We have criminal background checks if you want to work in certain industries. We have now ID checks to make sure we're British citizens and we can work in the United Kingdom. That we have all these kind of things going on just for you and I wanting to be a dustman or a teacher or a prison service officer or any other job that we do. With the background checks, are we really supposed to believe that someone as important as the ambassador, the trade ambassador no less, to the United States, one of the key jobs in public service between America and Britain on international stage, are we meant to believe that full vetting was not done before the appointment? And if not, why not? It sounds like complete incompetence to me. Let's just watch the rest of this clip and see what you think.
After the announcement of the appointment, the security vetting was done. It was wrong. He wasn't told. Clearly, in November 2024, the head of the civil service was advising that security vetting needed to be sorted before the document, before the announcement was made. If I could read you the key section, he's saying, if you want to make a political appointment, that's what this bit is referring to, in a note from Simon Case to Keir Starmer, and we will develop a plan for them to acquire the necessary security clearances and do due diligence on any potential conflicts of interest or any other issues that you should be aware before confirming your choice. So that's Simon Case saying, get the necessary security clearances, get Peter Mandelson, if it's him, vetted and cleared before you confirm your choice, i.e. make the announcement. Clearly, Keir Starmer chose not to do that. Keir Starmer chose to ignore what is quite clearly formal advice from his cabinet secretary to do the security vetting before the appointment. Today, Keir Starmer's case for the defence of himself is that he says...
Okay, so everyone's asking the same question. Why was the official guidance on something so important ignored? And is it really credible that your Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was not informed? He did not think to do due diligence. He did not think to go over the background. Is that really a viable thing? That surely either Keir Starmer did know any Minister of Parliament, or he didn't know, and it shows complete incompetence in his role in public office, and he's not a fit person to be a Prime Minister. Now, why does this all matter? And who is Peter Mandelson? So let's just have a look at Peter Mandelson in brief. Okay, so Peter Mandelson first became a significant figure in as early as 1985, and the Labour Party of Neil Kinnock at the time. He joined as Director of Communications under Neil Kinnock. He became known as the first modern spin doctor, and he developed this title, the Prince of Darkness, which was earned and not mocked for some reason. Now, he got this title because he was known as a shadowy figure that could loop in and out, in between the cracks, in between the cameras, in between what was going on, and he had influence and direct control over lots of things that were going on in the Labour movement and the Labour Party as a whole for the last 40 years, effectively. But let's not forget, Peter Mandelson, if you forget about his relationship with Epstein for just a moment, that Peter Mandelson was sacked from the government twice under the Labour Party in 1999 and 2001 again. And he later again became brought in by Gordon Brown. We'll come to that later on. And he went on, after the Brown government finished, to form a global lobbying firm called Global Counsel, which has since been disbanded because it's all wound up because of this controversy. So let's just remind ourselves, okay, that of Peter Mandelson as well here. So this image this is on BBC News on the 13th of March, and then here we have the former Prince Andrew, Mountbatten Windsor, disgraced by his connections to Epstein and his China connections. The former Prince of Paedophilia, Jeffrey Epstein, now allegedly dead. And the former trade ambassador Lord Mandelson, always centres around here. Now, if you look at this picture, just look at it. Now, this was taken in 1999 to 2000 at an estimate. These guys do not look like they're new to each other, do they? They're in their dressing gowns. It's very influential, powerful figures. A person in line to the throne of the United Kingdom at the time, fortunately no longer. Okay, we've got a billionaire financier who was very well known then, very well established, connections with presidents, prime ministers, people all over the world. And then here, Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson. Again, and is one of his shadowy roles. God only knows what he was doing here. I dread to think. I don't want to hypothesise on that at the moment. But he clearly is a very well-connected person. No, not just politically, but all over the world behind the scenes. Now, he was known as the Kingmaker. In 35, 40 years in the Labour Party, that he was, as I said, in Neil Kinnock's government, he was, after the Labour leader John Smith died in the mid-90s, he was instrumental in getting Tony Blair into office. He pretended to be Gordon Brown's friend, and Gordon Brown thought he was going to be the nominated person to be the natural successor to John Smith, which he probably would have been the natural successor to John Smith. However, Peter Mandelson was the architect of the New Labour movement, and he was actually friends with Tony Blair, and he double-crossed Gordon Brown substantially. And Brown supposedly never forgave him. And he used a code name of Bobby to communicate with Blair so that Brown wouldn't find out. So in 1997, that Tony Blair wins his landslide election, as we all know, and Mandelson was rewarded. He got a title of the Minister Without Portfolio. This was basically a job that was invented to give the most powerful person in the Labour Party, it wasn't Tony Blair, but the most powerful person in the Labour Party, access to government. And he was often described as coordinating the entire government, and people called him the real Deputy Prime Minister, not the person that was nominated at the time. Now, fast forward to 2008, Gordon Brown becomes Prime Minister, and his sworn enemy, Peter Mandelson, is staggeringly brought back into the government. Now, no one can quite explain this. Now, Gordon Brown probably can. I expect that he was done a favour. No, and bear in mind, Peter Mandelson wasn't even an MP at this point. He was in the House of Lords. He'd been nominated to the House of Lords by Gordon Brown, and he got brought back into government via the House of Lords, and he was nominated as business secretary. Now, during this period, Mandelson himself sat on 35 government committees, and some called him the unelected Prime Minister, which is somewhat contradictory, bearing in mind that Gordon Brown was also not elected as a Prime Minister. But that's a story for a whole other day. Now, also at the same time, there were these dodgy trade dealings going on with China, and there were various other interactions going on, and these other things between Mandelson and Andrew and Epstein and Harvey Weinstein and other very, very dodgy figures. Okay, so fast forward again to 2020. Okay, Labour wins a landslide election. Starmer wins, not the election then, he wins the leadership of the Labour Party. Very heavily influenced and backed by Peter Mandelson, who becomes an informal advisor, oddly enough. And it does all tie into Morgan McSweeney as well, but we'll come to that another day. But Mandelson had a very significant influence with the Labour Party, very significant influence in bringing Keir Starmer to power, a very significant influence in the destruction of the Corbynist ideas, and even in the downfall of Jeremy Corbyn himself. That Mandelson was influential in the whole process of making sure that Jeremy Corbyn never became a Prime Minister. Then in 2024, Labour wins the landslide election, as we all know. After 14 years of failed Tory government, everyone was desperate for a change, and we got change. My God, we got change. But not in the way that we all hoped. And Mandelson declares Starmer the heir to Blair, and is rewarded with the US ambassador role, Britain's most prestigious diplomatic role on the global international stage. Okay, Mandelson himself described himself as a half of the 2.5 Musketeers, alongside Brown and Blair. When Starmer arrived, he was straight back into the fold, manipulating, controlling the Labour movement, the Labour Party. Let's not forget this. Okay, and then, what else do we know? So, in between all of this is Mandelson's connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein, as we know, convicted paedophile. He was sent to prison once before for soliciting underage sex. I call it rape, personally. But nevertheless, that's what his charge was. In his time, in Epstein's time in prison, Mandelson was writing to him, supporting him. You know, he called Epstein his best pal. And his birthday card, and his birthday book compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell, also in prison now, thank goodness. In contact from 2002 to 2016, after he was convicted, after Epstein is convicted of child sex offences, they remained in contact. Now, again, Mandelson urges Epstein to fight for early release after his conviction. So Mandelson is there supporting a convicted paedophile. Even then. This was known about. This was not secret. This was not new stuff. This was known about. Okay? So then we have this photo which we've just come across of the photos in the dressing gowns. Other ones exist as well. There are other more compromising ones where they're in their underwear, etc. Very, very dodgy stuff. And I did a quick look for connections between the three of them. Again, Mandelson and Epstein here in the kitchen. There are, when I searched for this, there are numerous compromising photos. Here's another one of Mandelson, look. Don't know who the woman is, but still very compromising. Again, we all know about this one with former Prince Andrew. I know when you just do a quick, very, very quick search, you know, all these very compromising things come about. And we're supposed to think that Keir Starmer didn't know anything about any of this stuff. It just beggars belief, doesn't it? Absolutely beggars belief. So again, there were a number of red flags that were ignored. The Cabinet Office flagged Epstein as a reputational risk. And this was dismissed by Number 10. Who can possibly, in their right mind, not see that Peter Mandelson's connections with Jeffrey Epstein, and whatever connection they were, would be a reputational risk? And then that's putting it very mildly, isn't it? A reputational risk. Who to? To the Prime Minister, to the government, to the Labour Party, to the country? But all of these were dismissed by Number 10. And by Number 10, ultimately, we are talking about Keir Starmer here, our not-so-esteemed Prime Minister. Okay, security services also raised concerns about the connection. They also, that says MI6 failed to clear him, on the China and the Epstein links. So, all of this time, both Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson had these very shadowy goings on with the Chinese Communist Party and people high up in the establishment in China. And again, this was known about. This was not a secret. This was known about before his appointment, that he was flying backwards and forwards to China, that he had his connections with Andrew, and Andrew was going backwards and forwards to China as well. And this is what they were both arrested on very recently. Why this arrest didn't happen previously, I don't know. Maybe there are no emails of the definitive proof, but this cannot have not been known about by the establishment. It just cannot not have been known about. It's just beggars belief. And again, know that Mandelson was appointed directly before the vetting had been completed, allegedly. Even allowing for the vetting not being completed, why would you appoint somebody before they've been checked out? Very dodgy, as I said before. But just these connections that we already talked about and already know about, surely that's enough. But this shows Mandelson's influence within the party, within the establishment, within the people. That he was so powerful, so influential, that he just managed to bypass the security checks somehow or other. Then the formal vetting denial came in January 28, 2025. And the Foreign Office overruled it. Now, Yvette Cooper disputes this, and she disputed it last year. And allegedly, no minister was told about this fail to vet. And Yvette Cooper says that her department weren't asked to contribute before the announcement was made. The Foreign Secretary. very high up in the government, not far down from where Starmer is himself. The Foreign Secretary not asked to contribute, doesn't compute. Why? How did that whole process get circumvented so significantly badly? And then, according to Sky News, it says that Number 10 did not judge these concerns as enough to stop the appointment. Some members of security services are unhappy with what has taken place in Downing Street. Well, no shit, Sherlock. No, it's hardly surprising some people are unhappy about this. This is all just beggars belief, doesn't it? It sounds incredulous that in a supposedly functioning, successful democratic parliament, that these things can all be so blatantly ignored. And the question has to be why. And the question has to be in Starmer's own competence. Is Starmer competent for the job? And all this is pointing to a significant no, he's not competent. On top of everything else we already know about, all the other angles that we already think and talk about with Keir Starmer, this has got to be the number one thing. He has to go for this. Starmer's got to be toast. And if he doesn't go, this just shows what a shit show the entire politics has become. If he stays in power, if he's, the powers that be above him, around him, manipulate him, and he still manages to hold on to power, even into the May elections, which are only now a couple of 3 weeks away, and hold on to him till then and sacrifice him then. That people should not be rallying around him. It stains themselves. It stains the people that are clinging to him. This is shit sticks, and it really does stick badly in these circumstances. So let's just have a look further on. So on the Tuesday, the 9th of September, as we've already discussed, the Foreign Office gets a media inquiry about the emails and passes it to Number 10. On Wednesday, the 10th of September, this is 2025, Starmer says he had full confidence and due process was followed. Wednesday, 10th of September in the evening, Starmer finally reads the emails himself. Very helpful. On the 11th of September, Mandelson was sacked. He refused to resign, so he had to be fired. So, Number 10 knew about the emails before Starmer defended Mandelson in the Commons. This is just ridiculous, isn't it? He knew about it before the appointment, before he defended him. And he knew about the problems that were going on. And still defended him? It begs some serious questions, Keir Starmer. I'm sorry, but I'm going to say again that you should resign, that it's time for you to go. And now, just having a look at the body count around this whole saga now, obviously it's Peter Mandelson himself. He was sacked, arrested in 2026, resigned from the Lords this year as well. Hopefully he doesn't have his title Lord still. I don't know about that. And then there's Sue Gray. Sue Gray was Keir Starmer's former Chief of Staff. Now, she did warn Starmer directly, personally. She warned everybody she could think about. And she was ousted by Morgan McSweeney. Morgan McSweeney being the founder of Labour Together. Again, a very close compatriot with Peter Mandelson. But no, Sue Gray did oppose the appointment, and she got kicked out. Ironically, by Morgan McSweeney, who has recently also been kicked out over the same thing. Morgan McSweeney wanted Mandelson to be appointed. He pushed for the appointment, probably at Mandelson's request. Don't forgetting the connections that go back many years here, that Morgan McSweeney is picking up Mandelson's ability to be the orchestrator of the Labour Party. Very instrumental again in Keir Starmer's election success, very instrumental in the Labour Party itself, became Keir Starmer's right-hand man, but he very heavily pushed for and succeeded in the appointment of Peter Mandelson. And then more recently, Ollie Robbins. He was a senior civil servant at the Foreign Office. He allegedly overruled the vetting. He allegedly told nobody, and he was fired this week. Now, Ollie Robbins is due to speak tomorrow, and I'm very much looking forward to what he has to say. I think there'll be some considerable light shed onto this whole sorry saga when he speaks. And obviously, Keir Starmer is due to speak in the next hour or two as well. But this just shows what a corrupt shit show we've got running this country at the moment. So on the bigger picture of this, Mandelson arranged for Epstein's meeting with Tony Blair in 2002. He called Epstein safe in an email to Blair about it. Prince Andrew arrested the same week as Peter Mandelson, February 2026. The same charge of passing on state secrets to Epstein, and then to China by the look of it. Both had undisclosed China connections. And this is a developing story. We're going to learn more about this as time goes on. Okay, and just to wrap up this video then. So Starmer is about to address Parliament like in the next hour or two with the relevant facts on this subject. The relevant facts, I assume he's going to mean the massage facts. Now, how he's going to try and keep his job. He's going to say that he didn't know. He's going to stick to that story. He's going to say that he is competent and he's absolutely shocked that people didn't tell him. He's going to stick to the story. Starmer is a one-story man. He has plausible deniability, even as Prime Minister. It's unplausible and it's undeniable in my opinion. This is the argument I believe he's going to take today, when he should be giving a resignation speech to the House of Commons later on. I don't think that's going to happen. So was the ministerial code broken by Starmer? Did he lie to the House? His defence is he didn't know. But he was warned in writing by his own staff, as we discussed already. Now, either he's honest or he's dishonest. Either he's in control of his government or he's not in control of his government. A PM can't be both. Either he is competent, in charge, he knows what's going on, or he's incompetent, he misled the House and he didn't know what was going on. And either way is indefensible for the person running our country. Now, thanks very much for coming to the end of this. I'm looking forward to seeing the debate later on. Again, please do like, subscribe, comment below. Do appreciate your support. Let me know your thoughts. I'll look forward to reading your comments later. Bye for now.